What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets, and break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, and talk about what you should be watching for in the charts as we approach this market open in just about half an hour. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. Deposit $25,000 more and you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends in just 10 days. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So far the market's dipping just a little bit as we're seeing semiconductors dip a little as well during this pre-market session, but it's not that bad. But Tesla of all things is dipping a little bit more since we had some negative news that came out this morning. So I want to break down what that negative news was and what are some very important levels to watch for support for Tesla stock. Although the share price does tend to see more volatility approaching its earnings for the week, which is going to be on Wednesday, this negative news is what's kind of slowing it down. So there's news that's coming out that's saying that Ford is telling some EV customers to stop using its Tesla supercharger adapter. That's not the best of news. Ford is going to be sending some free replacements for its NACS adapter, which it says could slow or damage some of its EV customers' charging ports. So that's actually very, very important. So I just want to say that they're offering these free adapters for Tesla Supercharger network. They're doing this basically in February and telling some of its customers to stop using them, according to reports from Inside EVs. They're saying that they found a potential issue that could cause, once again, reduced charging speeds over time or even damage the charger port itself. So that's not the best of news, at least for them. Also, they're saying that they're going to supply a replacement adapter in the coming weeks and provide return instructions to send them back to their existing adapter as well. So they're doing this at no cost, essentially. So this is some interesting news. They're also saying, and this is actually making like all the headlines. If you look at like many different sources out there, we're seeing the same thing that's essentially coming out. Ford has announced that customers should no longer use the NACS adapter that initially shipped to EV owners. So not the best of news for Tesla, kind of slowing down revenue. And they're also saying that once again the adapter has some issues. It may reduce some, charging times and factors like that. So I just wanted to call that out. On top of this, I just want to mention that for the broader market, today is Monday, October 21st, 2024. Logan should be giving a speech right now, and then later on at 11:30 a.m. we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions. Not to mention Cash, Kari, and Schmidt giving speeches later on during the day. So we'll see what that leads to for the markets. This is what the earnings calendar looks like thus far. Very minor earnings so far for today. Even SAP is going to be a little bit more minor. But going into Tuesday and beyond, we do have Verizon, GM, and a few more announcing earnings. And for Wednesday, we have Boeing, AT&T, Coca-Cola before the market opens. Not to mention Tesla and IBM after market close. So something else that's worth noting. News about the market, there's not really much going on so far. The market had 6 straight positive weeks. We'll have to see how well it holds up from here. I also want to mention we'll see what happens with Tesla. So far, there's been a lot of talk about the election, which is just about 2 weeks away. So pretty interesting stuff. We're approaching the end of October already, and it's going to be very intense. So what do I see for Tesla, in my personal opinion? What is my view? So now with this negative news that came out, Tesla's showing some weakness, despite the fact that it was trying to push this EMA. If you're bullish on Tesla, you need to get back above 220 and then 221.65 at the very least. If you're bearish, you're going to be looking for a bigger move back down. Unfortunately, we're barely holding the 217 support, so if that fails us, I do see us potentially coming down to about 215, and that's going to be our critical support of the day, the 215 area. We got to hold above that. If we don't hold 215, there's going to be a risk of Tesla potentially dipping all the way down, not just to our 200 EMA, but this next imbalance, which would take us closer to like the 210s. So be careful at Tesla, guys. There's a little bit of weakness that's building on the chart after this negative news that came out. And on top of that, the broader markets is going to be affecting it a little bit. So I'm seeing some weakness from this point. So unless we get back above 220, the share price is suggesting there's going to be some downside. So just be careful with Tesla, guys. Negative news comes out. It's not Tesla's fault always, but it is what it is. Now, as far as SPY goes, we are dipping a little bit during this pre-market session. However, we have some critical support at 582.26. Are we going to pump and bounce off our 582 area to try to push back up to this imbalance towards 584? Or do we lose 582 and start dipping back down all the way down to the 580 support, if not 578? So watch 582. Lose that, we turn more bearish. Hold that, we could rebound first and then maybe dip a little bit later. So we're just going to watch that key support on SPY to see if that holds or not. That's going to be critical. That's going to be our 20 EMA. We're seeing a big test right now. For ES is barely holding its 20 EMA. That's 58.92. If we could bounce off this, we're going back up to the 5900s. If we lose this support, we're at risk of falling all the way down to the 58.75 area, if not 58.67. So watch and see if 58.92 holds. We're barely holding support right now. So we'll see how well it does. For Nvidia, we are kind of flat right now, but watch support at 136.4. If we bounce off 136.4, we could try to get closer to 138. And if we lose 136.4, we're going to be looking for a bigger dip all the way down to 133. So watch 136.4 is our critical support. For Bitcoin has a bearish divergence here. If we don't hold 68,000 flats, there's going to be a risk of this dumping all the way down to the 67,600 area. And if we hold this, we could try to bounce to 69,000. I think that with the bearish divergence here, there's a risk of us dipping all the way down to these lower levels. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. For others out there, let me just go back down. We also have NQ. NQ is dipping a little bit. I was talking about how tech was showing some weakness. Now, I do have one concern about NQ and the QQQ. We had a high up here. We came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high again. So, we got to reclaim 20,500. We're only 100 points away for us to have some hope of getting back up. If we can't do that, look at 20,388 as our support. If that fails us, this is at risk of coming all the way down to about the 20,200 area again. So be careful with NQ. Watch and see if we get a little pop and if we can try to break this resistance or not. Otherwise, there's a risk of this coming down lower. So just be very mindful of that. For the QQQ, it's the same thing. We had a high here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high. So if we end up losing 490, there's a risk of us dumping all the way down to the 488 area. And we have this resistance to watch for around 494. I think there's a chance we kind of pop a bit to where this resistance is before it starts dipping lower. And there's still that risk of us dipping down to that 488 area. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case and be very, very patient nonetheless. As far as Apple goes, Apple's dipping. We have this gap to fill down here. If Apple does not reclaim 235, I do see a risk of us dipping to 232, then eventually lower. So that's showing some weakness, at least on the chart thus far. For the IWM, we talked about how it might be testing 224. We did come down to 224, the 20 EMA only to start rebounding a bit. So we'll see if we try to break past 226 to turn back up. If we come short of that, there's a risk of us coming back down to 224 or below. And we could be dipping all the way down to the 223s if we lose 224.6. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. For Amazon, we have a bearish divergence that's beginning to form. We ended up dipping back down to 187 in the pre-market. Now we're getting bought back up a little bit. Reclaim 190, we turn back up. But if we make a lower high here, so we start pushing higher for 189, reject, there's still that risk of us coming down to 187. For Meta, we're on a bit of a downtrend here. I do see a risk of it getting close to the lower 570s. If we don't get back above 580, the risk is we're coming down to about the 570 area. So there's a risk of that. For Microsoft, I just want to say that we're just consolidating. We could retest 418 and we'll see if you reject or not off of that. If we do reject, we could be dipping back down to like 414. So be mindful of that. For Google, we're making lower highs right now. If we don't reclaim 165, we're at risk of dipping back down towards 164.4. And if that fails us, we do have this balance down here at 163. So be very careful, guys. We'll see how this ends up moving. But with that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. So far, there's a little bit of more weakness in Tesla compared to the broader markets. So we'll see how well 217 holds. Right now, the risk is now to the downside because of some negative news. So it is what it is, guys. We just have to accept this news and we'll see how things end up going. So let's be optimistic. And then the main move is going to be after earnings. So we're just going to wait for that as well. All right. So thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day and peace out.